lot of kids coming here with the mindset where, this in a football, I'm going to come in here and come start day one. Nah, that shit doesn't work like that.
Hello, welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. This is D1R 206. I've got a great guest joining me on the podcast tonight. That's quarterback Carson Rodgers down at Texas Wesleyan. Had an absolute ball with him on the interview, so definitely stick around for that one. Otherwise, though, tonight we are taking a look at one of the best conferences in D2 football. The GLIAC is the first conference we will be breaking down heading into the 2025 season. Every week from here to the start of the season is the goal to break down a new Division II football conference every week and give you guys all the information you need to know heading into the 25 season. We'll also take a look at what we think are the best Division III Week 1 matchups heading into 2025. We've got an incredible slate later on. Jimmy Martin joins me for that conversation. Drew Carpenter is back on the pod to talk D2 football. So I'm very excited about those portions of the episode. But to start things off, I unfortunately would be remiss if I did not lead this podcast off with honoring a guy that competed and played and made an impact at the Division II level. Colt Sinor from Carson Newman unfortunately passed away very recently. He courageously battled cancer during his time at Carson Newman, and really an incredible story from Colt that I felt was worth sharing to start off the podcast tonight. In 2021, Colt sat out the entire season to battle testicular cancer. He rang the bell, was cleared to return during spring ball the following season. In 2022, he started 5 games at left guard and a game at center for Carson Newman. In 2023, he started in 9 of the 11 games on the year on the offensive line, making those steps week in and week out, still in remission. In 2024, Sinor appeared in all 12 games for the Carson Newman Eagles squad on the offensive line. And now he was going on to a different opportunity, entered the transfer portal, and was slated to play at Lenoir-Rhyne this fall. Here is the committed post from him. And unfortunately, his battle with cancer came to an end. And it really is, I think, just a great reminder of what can be taken away from you in this sport. This sport, like anything, comes and goes so fast. And I want to make sure I recognize Colt for a lot of the things that he overcame, and not knowing him personally, I wish I could have. To know some of those things that he went through in that battle, and for him to share that story with me, whether it be in person or virtually, we won't have that chance, unfortunately. But I want to say to Colt, his family, his teammates, his coaches, one, be grateful. Be grateful you were around a strong human, a courageous human like Colt that overcame those kind of things for the people around him. And 2, continue to do it for him, right? Continue to do it for him, play through him, live through him, and honor him in that way by going and living by those values that he lived by day in and day out. So a massive shout out to Colt and the way that he was able to battle through that adversity and make the most of his time here. I'm sure the people down there have felt his presence and will continue to feel his presence throughout the coming season. I wanted to make sure I recognized him at the start of this episode. And of course, per usual, on the bottom of the screen there, red timestamps, fast forward to any part of this video that you'd like to, and then get out of here. But we've got a great episode for you tonight. Follow us on the socials, and let's get right into this episode with our first guest conversation. Joining the show tonight, going into his redshirt senior season under center with the Rams at Texas Wesleyan, perhaps one of the best anglers in the Lone Star State, it's quarterback Carson Rodgers. What's up, fella?
Hey, how you doing?
Dude, I'm great. Excited to get you on here. This is a team that we've talked about a little bit on this show, but one that I think we need to talk more about heading into this fall. Year 5 for you down in Fort Worth. What can you say about this team that's got you excited for 2025?
Man, first off, our bond is it's for a college program, it's as good as we'll get. Really close, tight-knit group. We got a lot of returners. Whole line's coming back. You don't get to say that too often. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle right there. Have some young guys and a few transfers filling some spots of some key role players that we lost last year. But man, for the most part, man, we're rolling through summer right now and looking forward to August 27th. I think is first date at Lindsey Wilson in Kentucky.
Okay,
should be a good one.
Yeah,
and looking forward to it.
Yeah, get that up on the wall down there somewhere. That's a good one. But what's the biggest catch we've got this offseason without giving up the honey hole?
I caught a few red snapper a couple weeks ago down
Okay.
in I'll give the Matagorda, Texas, small
Okay.
town off the Texas coast.
Yeah, we don't need like longitude and latitude. We'll let you keep that to yourself. But that's awesome, man. That's a neat deal. You get many of the guys out fishing with you?
Yeah, no, I've taken a few guys with me. We go fish some of the ponds here in the DFW area, and then my old head coach, Coach Perdone, who stepped down 2 seasons ago. He's got a badass ranch in East Texas, and
Okay.
so we'll go smoke some bass out there. So,
Now we're talking. The ranch fed.
legit.
That's got to be nice.
It's legit.
That's
Very
awesome,
legit.
man. Talk about that line. That feels like a really good potential for some lineman bonding activities. Does that take place?
We do linemen. We've been talking about doing a QB bonding trip this summer.
Okay.
Going out to the ranch and catching bass and crappie and having a good old time. Taking the QB coach out there too. He's been a few times, so
Sweet, man.
he knows what it's about. And we're a pretty tight knit group in general. We go golfing together all the time. Do all kinds of things. So
Good, man. And you were talking before we got going about the buy-in when it comes to guys up there in the summer, right? And what you guys have going on right now. Talk a little bit about that and what makes that important for you guys.
man, just growing up in Texas, playing Texas high school football, the summer strength and conditioning camp was always the most important part. And I feel like that kind of relates to our college strength and conditioning camp too. Most of our team is from the Fort Worth or Houston area. And so got a lot of guys from big 6As, 5As. We got a few guys from 4As, 3As, all over the place like that too. But just being able to get together and stay with each other in the same dorm and eat every meal together and go to work every morning bright and early at 7:30 in the morning.
Hell yeah.
It's the equation to a good season. So that's the goal for this year.
A lot of ingredients go into that. Certainly one of the most prominent ones, but this was a team that only won 5 games in 2 seasons in 2017 and 2018. You come out of COVID with a new vision for this program, a new collective, and a new effort. We've come to know it as a powerhouse at the NAIA level and one of the best football states in the country, right? 27-5 in the last 3 seasons for the Rams. Obviously, you haven't been there for the entire stretch of that. You've been there for a lot of it, though. What has gone into this program? What have those teams brought that has propelled you guys into the national conversation here?
And first off, our coaching's been phenomenal. Coach Fran Johnson stepped in from Benedictine. He coached there for almost 20 years, and he came here and kind of brought a new sense to the group, new kind of different offense, a lot of pro style stuff, but he really depicts it off the players. He does what the players or the athletes give him, and then just the bond over the years too with our teammates and stuff. It's grown a lot. Coming in my freshman year, they won. It was COVID year. They got to play in like 1 game, 2 games. They beat a good Arizona Christian team, and then the next week they lost to a mediocre Sagu team, and then their season was done. And then that next summer was my first year, and just all the pieces kind of came together, and we started playing some really good football. And we've always had a very good O-line and a very good defense. Our defensive line has gotten after the quarterback every year I've been here, and sometimes I sit on the sideline going, "Ooh, ow!" Luckily, I'm not on the other side of that. And luckily, during practice, they can't hit me either. But, and our defense, man, they go by the hit squad. I swear they got some Cam Chancellor, Legion of Boom.
I like that.
Headhunt action to them. They get after it. So our offense and then our athletes too. We had a great running back the last 3 years. Ernie Caesar. He broke the NAIA rushing touchdown record this last season.
Oh yeah.
And he was a great athlete, and we're gonna miss him a lot, but we got some guys to take that place. And like I said, when you're returning the 5 big boys up front, there ain't too many issues with that. So now it's about filling in some younger guys and building that depth. So
Definitely have the blueprint, my man. You talk about it. And you guys have doubled down to a lot of those positions because you know those are crucial, those are integral pieces of this team. You're leading me right into my next question, talking about Ernest. And the year that he had last year, you talked about it, the NAIA record, it was 40 touchdowns in a year. I mean, come on, right? To go along with 1,100 yards out of that offensive backfield in 2024, the Sooner Athletic Conference Player of the Year. What was it like sharing the backfield with him, and how do you try and replicate that success and take on a bigger role this fall?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, hopefully we open it up a little bit more this year, you know. But no, that's all jokes. But no, Ernie was special. He was a good cat, very good running back, and we were very close on and off the field. And now he'll be missed, and we're expecting him to keep playing and go on to bigger and better things because there ain't too many running backs that can reverse the field like that guy. Make something out of absolutely nothing, and I've seen him do it many times. But he'll be missed. But we got a few freshman running backs that are very talented, really fast, and then we've always had a deep running back group over my time here. So we'll have the backs and we'll have the five guys up front and just our identity as an offense. We got to run the ball first before we start throwing the ball, but that all meshes together, and we do it. We can be very efficient and do a very good job out of it.
100%, man. Reload for you guys. You've been able to do that multiple times, even in just your tenure there. And Coach Sherrod takes over the helm of this program back in May of last year. You guys go on to experience the most success this program's seen in a long time. 10-1, trip to the second round of the playoffs. How has he been able to get the most out of these guys and maximize that collective effort down there?
He pushes us hard, and coming from that Division I background too, he's a very smart coach. He knows his X's and O's. But he also knows what it takes to like our summer workouts and our conditioning. It's always been tough, but it's not like it hasn't gotten tougher, but we're keeping our bodies better. We're getting our bodies in a better place. So when we play this 11-game season, we're not getting banged up and dealing with those injuries and stuff like that. And I feel like Coach Rod's had a very big part to that.
Yeah, it does feel like one of the major differences when you make that big jump is maybe not the amount of effort, right? You can't, strength coaches around the country love to say give 102, 103%. Shit's not possible. You got 100, you're either there or you aren't, right? And guys at this level are giving that. That's no question about it. But the difference between those levels sometimes is when and how often, right? Division I programs, you might report that first couple weeks of June and you're there all the way up until camp. Or a D3, a D2, even an NAIA. There are a lot of programs that don't have that buy-in you were talking about earlier. Guys go back to their respective hometowns. You might not see them until report day. So that feels like a big piece that someone like Coach Sherrod could bring into this program. What are some of the other things you think from a fundamental or a day-to-day operations standpoint he's brought having that experience at a larger institution?
I would, because he's got a defensive background, and he kind of is our founding father for our defense, and we kind of switched our schemes up from the previous staff, and this scheme I give them a lot of credit because they'll mix it up. On Monday we'll see an odd front, and the next day we'll see even front, and one day we're seeing straight cover 1, cover 0. The next day they're in cover 4, playing cloud, they do it all, and so. That's what I'll give credit to Coach Sherrod on, at least schematically, that they're doing the right stuff and they're in the right places. So it's just on the players to go out there and execute and make the plays that we need to do. So
that's the job of a good coach, man. Let the players play, just put them in the right spot to do that. And you've talked a lot about this offensive line already, and you got good reason to be excited about that, right? First team all-conference, multiple guys coming back. Also second team all-conference guys, Malone, New, Morrison, even your tight end, Darren White, right? There are guys coming back that have a lot of talent in those rooms. Some of them surprisingly young to earn a lot of those accolades, something I was looking at as I prep for this conversation. How do you help those guys grow into leadership roles this fall? Losing guys like Ernie and other skill or trench type players, how do you help them grow into those roles?
Yeah, I think right now is really the most important time. You know, a lot of our O linemen, we had like 3 freshmen starting on the O line this past year. And this time last year it was a little, we were a little shaky. I was always confident in my guys, but after we played a 10-game season and went through that, and they played their butts off. They had a hell of a year, and now it's saying, hey, what's the next step? Obviously, we got our feet wet. We went to the playoffs, but this one and done crap is over with. We got to keep pushing. We got to go make a run next year or this year, and just especially right now during this off season, having the guys being more vocal and stepping up and stay on the film and know how they can level up their game and just not being complacent.
100%. And those guys you talk about, those underclassmen, they've earned their stripes. You talked about it. Throughout the course of the season, to go out and show up and to perform at the level that they did, right? You don't earn those accolades for just strapping up the shoulder pads and going between the white lines. But now that they have, kind of earned those stripes, this is where you get to step up and maybe be a little bit more of a vocal leader, so to speak, in the summer. How do you encourage them maybe to take on that role specifically and to lift up some of these guys around them? Because football is such a unique sport in that obviously your roster is typically over 100 guys. There is very infrequently one voice on a football team that everyone follows, and there may be pockets here, there, and everywhere. They need to have leaders in each of those groups and to lift people up and have them follow. How do you get guys to step up into that situation, especially now in the off season when the strength conditioning starts going on?
Yeah, no, just being there, encouraging each other. Really, I've told some of the underclassmen and guys slowly becoming veterans and stuff like that. Hey, I can't be the only one saying stuff when someone's late or someone's being nonchalant and going through the motions. I can't be the one saying, hey, let's get your crap together and let's roll. I needed voices behind me, especially when these true freshmen step on campus and I don't know where they went to high school, but who cares when they went to high school? That's over with. This is a whole different ball game. And a lot of kids come in here with the mindset where, this is NAIA football. I'm gonna come in here and come start day one. Nah, that shit doesn't work like that. There's players wherever you go all across college football, regardless, but especially to get in the starting 11, you got to be a dude. That ain't and you have to wait your turn. Everyone has a lot of kids, you don't start as a freshman in high school. That doesn't happen. You wait sophomore, junior, senior, whatever. It's the same kind of deal. But It's just getting those guys, encouraging these kids and also, lead them in the right direction, lead by example, do your job on and off the field, do your 111th, and just lead this football team and to where we need to be.
Hell yeah! You got any coaching in your future, dude?
That's the goal.
Is it good? You got some coach speaking mannerisms down in a good way. In a good way, by the way. But I can see as the brain starts going too, and you go back to some of the classics and the 111th was a great pull there at the end of that piece. But no, you're 100% right.
That's a Coach Johnson quote. Yes, sir.
Good. I like that, man. What's the level if you had to choose, right? If you're coaching, is it football? Is it something else? And what level?
It's football, and the goal is collegiately or professionally.
There you go.
See how far we can go.
Good for you, brother. And going back to the leadership point and the speaking up and some of the tougher parts of being a leader when guys are late or not doing their 111th, right? Mm-hmm. That's something where I'm sure a lot of them have heard it from you, right? And it's one thing to hear it from the guy that's the quarterback. It's kind of his thing. He's been, going to a fifth year type of situation. It's another thing when they hear it from the redshirt freshman, the redshirt sophomore that has, again, earned their stripes and played through that year and been a part of a lot of success for this team, but is also holding them accountable. That's a whole nother deal. And after you get to that going, that thing can snowball, man, in a great way. It can snowball in a great way. That's how you get player-led teams that go on to win some hardware and win some championships. But that's awesome, man. Up to anything else exciting before camp kicks off in August?
I think we got a pool party set up at one of the boosters' house or something like that.
Okay.
So we're looking forward to that. I'm a cornhole machine, so I went 15-0 last year's pool party on the cornhole board. So I plan on keeping the streak alive.
You got a reputation to keep. I'm just happy you didn't call it bags, to be honest.
No, it's fun. That must be a Yankee thing. I don't know. That must be a Yankee thing.
I'm not there, man. I'm with you. So yeah, go ahead and let's go win some hardware at the pool party. Let's carry that over into the fall. Excited to follow along with you come August and come some of those big time matchups early on in the season for you guys, Carson. So thank you for joining the show, brother. I think that's all I got for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your night. Tonight is the first conference feature at the Division II level, and joining me to talk about one of the best conferences in D2 football, a man who played in this conference for a little bit, at least before the teams made the move, Drew Carpenter. What's up, fella?
How you doing, Kobe? You know, it's great to be this part of the role now. No longer having to get beat up, just getting to watch people get beat up. So it's great.
That is solid. Had some GLIAC years when Northwood was still around before they made the move to the GMAC. We're talking GLIAC football tonight. Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. I believe that might be the first time I've actually said the whole thing out loud. And this is a conference that has been amongst the ranks of the best in the country for a very long time, and one that I think by far and away for the last couple decades has been the top of the mountain. Now, though, it might be starting to slip, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight in terms of the national scene. Currently, only 8 football member schools in the conference, with the addition of Roosevelt very recently. 7 of the 8 are in Michigan, Roosevelt being the one in Chicago and Illinois. Historically, like I said, one of the best conferences in D2 football. Tonight, we're talking all about the teams that make up this conference, who they gain in 2025, who they miss out on from the 2024 roster, all the storylines from these squads we need to know about before week 0 hits us in late August. All the transfer portal data, courtesy of our friends over at Athlink tonight, which have a great database for Division II and small school football transfer portal tracking. So we're going to cover this, Drew, in the order of the 2024 conference standings, the final standings of the conference from this last season. And when you look at it, of course, the team sitting alone atop the mountain, Ferris State, 10-1 overall, 7-0 in the conference. Right behind them is Grand Valley, kind of finishing out that top tier of the conference. Then you go down to some really solid squads with Davenport, Michigan Tech, Saginaw Valley, all vying for that third place spot, sitting at 7-4 overall, 4-3 inside of conference play. And then the more bottom tier of the conference with your Wayne State, Roosevelt, Northern Michigan teams still trying to find a foothold, so to speak, when it comes to GLIAC play. But let's start with the best of the best, man. Ferris State, the Bulldogs, 14-1 last year. They lost their season opener at Pittsburgh State, and from there on out, they go on to win every single game into the national championship and do it in a very dominant fashion, right? They lost their starting quarterback, Carson Rodgers, in week 1 in a matchup versus Lake Erie. Reportedly broke his leg in multiple places. Now, this is where things took a very different trajectory. It was kind of an inflection point for this Ferris State football team. Trinidad Chambliss steps in. He takes over, helps this team bring a championship back to Big Rapids for the third time in 4 seasons, if I may add. And that is a big piece of the conversation going into this fall is without Trinidad Chambliss, a guy we'll talk about even more, going on to Ole Miss of all places, can Carson Rodgers come back into the conversation and have that same level of dominance? Over the last 4 seasons, Bulldogs have been 50-5, the overall record for Ferris State, Drew. You've had the chance to line up on the other side of teams in this Coach Anise era. What stands out about the play style and the coaching style of these Bulldog squads?
I think the thing that stands out the most is speed and overall quickness. Not only on offense where you're thinking, oh, the slot receiver is really fast, or the running back, or Trinidad was very fast when we got to see him play, but also on defense. I mean, they pounce to the ball very easily. Defensive backs are always quick. They're very aggressive. They want to get you scrapped up, and not only do they have the athletes to back it up, but they got some big boys too. So Coach Anise has done a fabulous job as someone who's played against him twice and didn't really have the best of luck against him twice.
Absolutely.
I would say definitely as far as dynasty is concerned, you know what I mean? You look at like teams in professional sports, 3 out of 4 is considered pretty much like a dynasty. So they're really building something there.
They are, and that's a term that's gotten thrown around, and rightfully so. I talked about it. 3 of the last 4, man. You're bringing back championships to Big Rapids is an impressive feat, one that very, very little schools are in that kind of company. Now, Ferris is a team that has been really decimated by the portal, and for most teams, when you lose this level of talent, I emphasis on most, that's going to cripple your next season, right? When you lose the amount of guys that Ferris has lost going through this. For Ferris State, though, very much still in the national conversation, rated number 1 in the country in the first D2 preseason poll by Lindy Sports here. And that is one that I think surprised a lot of people coming off of this mass exodus, so to speak, of the transfer portal. And let it be known, a lot of these guys are going up to the Division I level. You lose 3 All-Americans, 9 all-conference players, and you're still number 1 in the country heading into the following season. That is a testament to the trust and the level of program that Anise and company have built down there in Lower Michigan. Talked about Trinidad Chambliss. You can't replace 51 touchdowns in one season. That's incredible. But another guy that was an all-conference selection and a big-time playmaker in that offense, Cannon Katzer, going to West Virginia. That's a big piece out of the offensive backfield they need to replace. They lose, Drew, almost their whole offensive line, and that's been a calling card for them, the depth of that position. Guys like Lawrence Attar, Bryce George, Jarvis Wyndham, and then on the defensive side of the ball, a leader for them, Cephas Apaye at the linebacker position. Just some of the names moving on to bigger and better, so to speak, using air quotes there, because I don't know how much better it does get than winning those national championships at Ferris State. They do bring in some transfer portal talent, though. An offensive lineman addressing that position. They're bringing in one from Middle Tennessee State. That should be a big addition early on for this Ferris State attack. They got a DB. This is an interesting one from NAIA champion Grandview. He was an All-American that should come in right away and compete for that starting job. And a linebacker from Central Michigan to bolster the defensive front for this Bulldog team. Now, though, the questions for the 2025 season, I think I kind of said it earlier on. Can Golker come back in physically, mentally ready to bounce back from that injury? Determines kind of the identity of this team, this offense. You go back to 2022, where he led all of Division II in rushing touchdowns with 31 at the quarterback position. And then you talk about the O-line core, right? Being able to reload in that position. You lose a ton of starters at that spot. This is a team that I'm sure you've seen, I know others in the GLIAC have, where they have done a full line change at the offensive line position because of how much depth they've had at those different 5 spots that rotate in and out. What does that do from a defensive standpoint when you see all 5 offensive linemen sauntering off the field to be replaced immediately?
I think when you see that, you're just like, man, that would be nice, right? To have like 2 platoons that can just go out there. You kind of hit it on the head, though, when it comes to Ferris State. A lot of teams use the word, oh, we got to rebuild. They just reload. At the end of the day, from year to year, there's no real big alarming thing for Ferris State. And, when you're the best team in the country and you're consistently one of the best teams in the country, you have that ability, and rightfully so.
100%. You look ahead at the 2025 schedule for this squad. They get the rematch with Pitt State early on, week 0. That's going to be an exciting one. And then another tough non-conference game, versus Tiffin in week 2 before getting into a few other non-conference. They get a bye before getting into the GLIAC schedule for Ferris there. So a lot of things going to be examined very closely under a microscope, if you will, for this iteration of the Ferris State team. But tell me about what is most likely their best competition inside the GLIAC.
They say to beat the best, or to be the best, you got to beat the best, and that's what Grand Valley's trying to do this year. Last year, they were very close, suffered a tough loss against Ferris, but ended up losing to Harding in the second round of the playoffs, I believe, after beating UND, which I'm sure that is not anywhere close to where they want to be at. And knowing Coach Wooster personally through the recruiting process coming out of high school, very competitive guy, and also wants to be a winner, and he's done nothing but win so far at Grand Valley. You look at Grand Valley, right? You'd already mentioned that. Talk about Pittsburgh State having a loaded schedule. Grand Valley's got one too because they play at Pittsburgh State.
Yeah.
Big game for them, week 3. It kind of sets off some serious playoff implications down the road, if you ask me. Something to where it's like, hey, we beat them early. That's a big deal. You look at a couple of guys that they lost. A lot on the defensive side. Terez Reed, Niles King, Devin Pringle, Ian Kennelly, like some really good football players for them looking at next level or going to the transfer portal. Something to where it's like, all right, how can we reload there? So very much on the defensive side of the ball. And then they also added a couple of transfer additions, Kyler Bronin from Michigan State University, as well as Brody Drogosh, from Cincinnati, a quarterback, as well as adding multiple Division II guys as well, bringing in Pearson from Albion, as well as a defensive lineman from Hillsdale. Like, you're bringing in guys who know how to play college football. There's a difference between high school and proven college guys that can come in and play right away. So definitely guys that can understand a defense and an offense. I think the biggest question for Grand Valley is just 2 things. One, the quarterback play. They rotated a couple guys last year. So is there going to be someone to necessarily step up and be the man? And then 2, get past Ferris State. After you get past Ferris State, I believe it's nothing but bright lights, and that's a big deal for them, right? Going to win in the national championship. They don't want to just win the GLIAC; they want to win the national championship. So I think those are the 2 biggest things going for them.
The ceiling is incredibly high, right, for this program. You talk about the success that they've had, and going back all the way to the Chip Kelly days and what they were able to accomplish in that time span. They've had so much success since then, But since you are Grand Valley and since you have this hanging over your head, this ceiling and this level of expectations, any other program in America outside of the Ferris States and the Hardings and some of these top 10 type squads, anyone else would be overjoyed with the results that they have. Grand Valley is it really is just it's a tough set of circumstances for them, and they have not gotten over that proverbial hump being the Anchor Bone Classic, and in this case, the playoffs.
I believe it's very similar to when Georgia was trying to beat Alabama, and they finally did it, and then it became like a real rivalry all the time. And like, these are two of the best programs in the country in Division II. And you're looking at a couple guys like Kellen Reed should be able to step up a receiver for them. Kenneth Jones and Derek Woods, two running backs that definitely going to have to step up as well. And then Anthony Cardomone, I don't know how to say it, but Anthony Cardamone,
absolute dog. Yep, seen him play a ton of ball. He is going to be anchor on that defensive front. Played a lot with our guy Swanson there when he was still with the Lakers. That dude is going to be he's going to be a force, man.
Expect big things out of him, of course. And then I really think that Grand Valley, Jimmy Downs as well could definitely come big part of them too. So I expect big things like you do with Grand Valley every year. Expect really big things and expect them to not only push Ferris but look to win the GLIAC, obviously, and look to win a national championship.
Yeah, man, that running back room has had a lot of talent come through those doors in the last couple of years. You go back to Tariq Reed, even this last year, Khalil Eichelberger, very different running styles, but both very dominant backs in their respective ways. And you go back to that transfer portal edition in Brody Drogosh, coming from Cincinnati, but originally a Michigan kid coming back, maybe not getting the opportunity or the looks that he wanted at that D1 level. That's where Grand Valley excels, man. That's where they excel. They get these guys that maybe didn't get that correct, in their mind, the right amount of playing time or those kind of looks. They come back and get this Division I feel at the D2 level playing at Grand Valley State. Another team, though, Drew, that does a great job inside of the portal is the Davenport Panthers, man. And that's one you kind of work your way into. I don't want to say the second tier because they're going to be teams that try and, jostle GV and Ferris State out of that number 1 and 2 spot, respectively. But this Davenport team kicks things off with a 7-4 record last year. You talk about a team that has played the top half of the league very competitively. You go back to the Ferris State and Grand Valley games. They have not been outmatched and outclassed in a lot of those games. They can't let themselves get behind in those games, though. You go down 17-0 against GV and SVSU. You went on to lose both those games. Where Davenport has been very good, especially this last year, is the one-score games. They had 5 of them in 2024. They won 4 of the 5 contests, and then that one loss was a tough one, 32-31 to a very talented UCM Central Missouri team. That the Harlan Hill winner, of course, Zach Zabrowski at quarterback. One of the, if not the best offense in all of Division II football. So, Davenport, you live by the portal. That means by proxy, you also die by the portal, so to speak.
Absolutely.
They had 16 guys in the portal. Only 2 recorded starters, though. Again, according to Athlink, only 2 recorded starters going out from the Panthers there, which is a really good sign for Coach Sparky and company. 13 incoming transfers. And Drew, what highlights this incoming transfer class, Cephas Harris, the running back from Youngstown State, that name very familiar to people who have followed Davenport football in recent memory. His brother, Myron, who was the offensive back of the year in the GLIAC for the Panthers last season, he was a dog, a guy that I got to see at the high school level and at the college level at 2 different GLIAC institutions, at Wayne and Davenport. He comes in to fill those shoes. And again, a guy who played some meaningful snaps at the D1 level, maybe wasn't getting the looks or the snaps that he wanted, gets that Division I feel at a really high-level Division II university. Another great note, though, 5 transfers coming in for the Panthers from Concordia Ann Arbor. That was the NAI program. Of course, you and I know about it. In Michigan, that was unfortunately shut down. Good to see that. You got a wide receiver from Bowling Green and a couple other D2 guys that started at previous schools. So, again, it kind of feels like the identity of this Davenport team has been live and die by the portal. You look at DeJuan Mathis, the quarterback, bounced back from Georgia and a couple other places last year, and I think the guys embrace that. I think that's something they kind of built their identity around, and they're able to do that. It's a tough deal, but their staff has certainly, that's been the strength of Coach Sparky down there in this program to re-recruit almost every single year on this roster. And when you look towards the 2025 schedule for this Davenport squad, Drew, what you'll see is that the out-of-conference schedule maybe not as intimidating as a GV or a Ferris. Gannon in week 0, though, no pushover. It's a quality PSAC opponent. Their record 3-7 last year doesn't exactly tell the whole story for that Knight squad. Truman State, one of the more respectable programs coming out of the GLVC. And then, of course, you get into the GLIAC play, and from there, you know exactly how that goes. They draw Northern Michigan twice, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the last thing I want to say about Davenport, they had a wide receiver, Hakeem Harris, who was selected in the CFL draft this year, was one of only 2 small school products to actually be picked in the CFL draft. He goes over to the Montreal Alouettes, so that's a really neat deal. Round 3, pick 26, Hakeem Harris. And they've had a couple other guys go on to experience some professional looks. Our guy, Preston Smith, of course, being one of them, our former D1R athlete. So really neat deal for Davenport. Excited to see kind of what they can put together this fall and see if they can get over that hump, which the next 2 teams we're talking about, man, are going to be kind of in the same boat.
I think Davenport, the one word to describe them is athleticism. They're going to athlete you. Every single position is going to be an athlete. So definitely a team to always be on the lookout for as far as a dangerous team. The next team, though, I'm obviously very familiar with, being in the locker room this past season. The Michigan Tech Huskies, coached by Coach Metlack, absolute dog of a coach. We closed out the 2024 season very strong with a big comeback victory at Saginaw Valley State University. And we've been building momentum in the GLIAC, and I shouldn't say we anymore since I'm no longer in.
I was going to say, we're talking we. We talking you coming back? You got another year? Or?
You know how it is, man. I say we when we're talking about the Lions, and I'm not speaking up for them. But anyway, very key departures on the defensive side of the ball as well as the offensive side of the ball. I think this is a huge opportunity for the Michigan Tech Huskies to kind of, go forward with this new class of athletes that they're going to have playing in some pretty big spots. A couple senior departures. Alex Freeze, obviously we know, very, very good quarterback at Michigan Tech. A good friend of ours, Hunter Chambers, had a very strong senior season. Darius Willis was a playmaker for them every single year that he was there. And then defensively, Austin Schlick, not only on the defensive line side, but also you're looking at the linebackers of Owen Watson, Hunter Beacole, Mark Sipple. These are some very experienced guys that have played a lot of games for them. But don't expect them to just go away or anything like that. There's one thing, Coach Metlick has the boys ready. It's always to, next man up mentality. Mark Sipple went out, I believe it was game 2, and it was a next man up mentality. So expect a lot of guys to step up, and that's where I'm kind of going into now. So the questions for a lot of them would be with veterans gone, who steps up into those key roles? And then as far as the most important position in sports, Alex Freeze is gone. Alex Bueno should be the starting quarterback based on depth chart a season ago. He's very mobile, can make a lot of good throws, and definitely brings a new added aspect to the offense with his legs. Not saying Freeze was a stump back there, but Bueno can move. That's all I'll say. Yep. And as far as some X factors going forward, Dante Bastanese, really, talk about a dog that's might not be the biggest dog in the yard, but he'll bite. Junkyard. He should, absolutely. Should draw the opposing receiver's number one option. Ethan Champney's always, a really good receiver. One of the best receivers I've ever seen personally, guarding personally. And then Brandon DeVries always, talk about helping a young quarterback have a dog up front. You know what I mean? Yep. So making sure that you have that. So I think the Huskies may look like on paper like they lost a lot of guys, but there's a lot of guys coming up, and that's no bias there. That's just how they operate.
I think the biggest thing for them is, can they continue to generate the pass rush that we've seen week in and week out for the last couple of years? You got to see that obviously on the back end and that defensive secondary with guys like Cribben and other pieces and Schlicht and guys up front that are able to get to the quarterback. That's been a calling card for this defense, I believe, over the last couple of seasons. With Metlack taking over, hopefully can keep that going for them, because their defense has been so disruptive, and that's something that has kept them in a lot of these games, these gritty type games where the offense for the Huskies might need a quarter or two to get going to keep up with this defense. But that's going to be a really interesting piece for me. The other one, of course, opening 2025 with what right now is a top 10 team in the country in the Bemidji State Beavers, a team that people are very high on coming into the fall. What does that game look like? It was a fantastic game in 2024. Will it live up to that same billing and the same hype? I absolutely think so. And again, this is a Michigan Tech team that comes out, and I feel like they surprise one high-level squad every year. Can they make that 2? right? Instead of going and beating a Saginaw at the end of the year on this kind of last-second comeback, can they go and do that, and then they do it against Davenport, and then can they surprise one of the top dogs, so to speak, in a Ferris or a Grand Valley? That's going to be the question for Michigan Tech, and taking that next step is, when does that no longer become a surprise, right? And you have to do that over and over again to make that happen. And kind of the last team, I would say, so to speak, in this kind of category, as we've put it, Saginaw Valley, talking about them, this feels like a program, Drew, that was poised to take the next step in 2024, to etch and carve their way out of this second tier, so to speak, of the GLIAC, and take down one of the top dogs and take their place at the top of the food chain. That didn't happen, right? The loss to Northwood in the Axe Bowl, that seemed very uncharacteristic, I think, for this Saginaw Valley team to stoop down. And Northwood, to give them all the credit in the world, the trajectory since Coach B has been there has been on the up. I still did not think going into that game they were going to compete and win against a quality Saginaw opponent. They proved me and a lot of people wrong. But that loss felt very uncharacteristic for this squad. They went on the road right after, though. A couple weeks later, they beat number 15 U Indy. That felt like a great response from this Saginaw Valley team. You keep the GVSU game close, 16-9. Ferris was 27-24. They led twice in that game. Again, this is where it felt like they could take that next step. It never happened. They were unable to close out both those games. And, of course, that nail in the coffin at the end of the year, man. Huskies take them down on their own field. That was a tough loss for a Saginaw Valley guys. I could assume. I'm not part of that group. But you graduate the true leader, from what I can tell, which is Micah Kretzinger, the linebacker. He went to rookie minicamp with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, signed with the Ottawa Redblacks in the CFL, which is an exciting opportunity. In the transfer portal, this is where it gets interesting. 23 total departures for SVSU, only 5 recorded starters. Toughest losses to me from the outside looking in, of course, DB Elijah Gordon. He was first team all-conference. He's going to Central Michigan, staying in state. Their linebacker, Brandon Rawls, going to Oklahoma State. And then their running back, Terrence Brown Jr., he was a second team all-GLIAC selection. From what I can tell, Drew, he's still in the portal. So not sure if a return is potentially likely there, or if he have his sights set on a different institution. Additions, though, 5 incoming transfers. You got 2 former Michigan State PWOs, which, again, is kind of where the GLIAC makes their money on some of these guys. And then a really interesting one is Jack Amer, a quarterback from South Dakota State, excuse me. He didn't play for the Jackrabbits in 2024, but is looking for a new opportunity. And that could be a much-needed piece for this offense. And now you look ahead to the 2025 schedule for this Saginaw squad. This week's 0 matchup is an exciting one for me. Northeastern State, an MIAA team on the come-up right now. They've been kind of the doormat of the MIAA. Coach Chiaverini and that coaching staff down there have changed that very quickly. This is a team that I think is exciting for a lot of people. They haven't quite seen the success in the record books quite yet. That's just because of the strength of their conference. I'm very excited to see how they measure up against a pretty quality level GLIAC opponent. Otherwise, not too much parity from last year. Looking to take back that Axe Bowl trophy in week 2, I believe, right there. You've got Gannon set up in that week 1 slot, and then, of course, get into the GLIAC play amongst some other deals. So nothing too crazy popping out from this Saginaw Valley schedule. Another couple cool notes before we move on, though, Drew. This Saginaw Valley team has sent a couple guys very recently to the pros, that being in the UFL. How about these 2 Saginaw Valley alum playing for the Panthers and for the Battlehawks? Nate McCrary, the running back, who we saw play in the UFL championship very recently there, playing with the Panthers this spring. And then Nick Whiteside, the DB, played at Saginaw from 2018 to 2022, and then is with the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL. 2 guys right there making their pro mark. Whiteside also had a stint with the Washington Commanders in the NFL, which is a really cool deal for them. And then, of course, very recently, brand new turf installed of this incredible indoor facility at SAG. Have you been inside this thing, Drew?
Maybe. Yeah, a couple of times.
Yeah. This place is, it seriously is, between them and Grand Valley, they've got first-class indoor facilities. And a lot of teams are starting to catch up to them, but these are awesome, and it definitely separates those 2 programs. Saginaw Valley does a great job of that. But tell me about the GLIAC team out of Detroit, what to look forward to in 25.
So I think the next team that we got is the Wayne State Warriors. And, I personally know Coach Antoine Robinson, defensive coordinator there, and if there's one thing that Wayne State is going to be is he's going to want them to play confident, right? And I think that's a big thing for Wayne State now is you're coming off 2 you start the season very, very rough, and you kept some games close, but you weren't able to finish them off. But then you end the season, and you have two nice wins to end the year, going up against Roosevelt and Northern Michigan to end the year the right way, right? So how do you build off of that? That's the biggest question for me. So can you go into the next season with that confidence that Coach Robinson's going to want you to have, Coach Wheatley, I'm sure, is going to want you to have, and to set the tone off, they're going to start off with Tiffin and Findlay. And being someone who played in both the GLIAC and the GMAC, Tiffin and Findlay are very good programs that are not only going to hit you in the mouth, but they're going to let you know they hit you in the mouth. Okay. And so
I like that.
If there's one thing that they're going to do is they're going to play hard, and they got the guys to back it up as well. So I think that matchup for Wayne State right off the bat is a very good one. There is a couple of question marks about Wayne State, and that's just overall 30 departures into the transfer portal per athlete that, like we said, running backs departure, tight end John Rabo departure, as well as a leading receiver, Miles McCatherine, which is a very, very good player. And then you also look at guys defensively that are no longer with the team through graduation, but like Caleb Coleman and Carl Ware, like these are some guys that played a lot of ball. And, there's one thing to where it's like, okay, like we've talked about with a couple other teams, who steps up next, right? And it's tougher when you lose seniors and transfers, right? So depending on how that operates, obviously there's still time, so we'll figure that out. But depending on how that operates, we'll see how the Wayne State looks. As far as quarterback is concerned, they might have the most athletic quarterback in the conference.
Okay.
Champion Edwards, he's up there as far as athleticism with quarterbacks go. He can move, right? He had a long touchdown run against Northern Michigan, I believe. I think it was an 80-yard run. Like he can
felt like 80.
Yeah, he can move, right? And so, when you have a dynamic playmaker like that, it's how can we get him the ball in so many different ways? Can we want him to read option? Do we want to have quarterback design runs? Are we looking for RPOs? Anything like that to get him having the ball in his hands at all times. So I think he's a huge factor going forward.
And you talk about that quarterback position, Drew. I go back to Kolka, who was a guy for them that I thought performed at a pretty high level. He left when Coach Wheatley and kind of the new regime came into town with this Wayne State squad. Since he left, I don't believe they've had a ton of security at that position. Feels like this could be the first time in a while that they've had a really true, like kind of right-in, tie-in starter for them and a guy that could lead this offensive attack. And I think you look at that position, you have to have stability there. And if you don't, the rest of your team might follow suit.
I think we all can understand, too, as far as being in the system is concerned, like there's a lot between year one and year two, right? So,
absolutely.
With him coming in here as being a guy who played a lot of ball for them last year, expect him to be confident, right? They finished the season strong, like we talked about. So we'll see what they got as far as that's concerned. Xavier Tyus, he capped his last season off with a 100-yard performance against Northern Michigan. Expect big things out of him this year. And then Nick Ostis, tight end, and Justin Tuggle, with guys leaving in the portal, 2 all-conference guys, expect them to not only, build off their seasons last year, but kind of become those main factors.
Absolutely, man. No, I think that's very well said, and that's a Wayne State team that has a lot to prove, right? You're in the hotbed in Metro Detroit, not even Metro Detroit, downtown Detroit, and you've got access to a ton of great recruits down there, and they've had the athletes. I don't think that's been a problem for them. They've had the guys to get it done. Now it becomes an issue of how do you go out there and execute, right? And the coaches, you got to trust the coaches are going to put those guys in the right spot to go out there and do just that.
And one thing I would say, too, defensively, Elijah Folks coming back is a big deal for them. Guys played a lot of ball. And expect him to be not only a key contributor on defense, but I'm sure like a big voice on the team as well. You look at a guy like, especially defensively, when you see a guy that's played a lot of ball and you expect him to not only do good things like on the field, but to be that extra voice of, to help young guys and everything like that. That's a huge factor. You know what I mean? Because it's different on defense. It can happen at the linebacker, can happen at safety. On offense, you're more looking at the quarterback.
100%. And you talk about a team that's got some new leadership when it comes to the head coach of the program. Let's talk about the Roosevelt Lakers. 1-9 in 2024. Picked up their lone win in their inaugural D2 campaign, moving up from the NAI level, up here in the Superior Dome against Northern. Played a competitive game against Davenport. Otherwise, they were outmatched, right? You look at their schedule in the GLIAC. I think it's pretty safe to say this team was just physically not ready for GLIAC play last year. How does that change going into 2025? And I think it starts right here with the new head coach of the program, Bill McKeon, taking the reins. And he served last season as the program's defensive coordinator and the DB coach. Prior to Roosevelt was the DC at St. Xavier as a top-level NAIA team, where he also played in college. He was an All-American All-American wide receiver there, Drew, which is a really neat deal. And this is a guy that is trying to change the direction of this program under this new era, quote-unquote, of Laker football at the D2 level. Roosevelt, their only problems are not on the field. 28 total departures in the transfer portal, 3 of those being all-conference type players, 7 of them starting for the Lakers in 2024. Not a great number for a new head coach. It happens when there's turnover. Typically, you don't see that amount of turnover when the hire is internal, though, correct?
I would assume so, right? When you have a familiar voice.
Yeah.
The one thing I think that Coach McCune's going to have to do is he's going to have to set a culture, right?
Yeah.
Like at that, being someone that was in a locker room where Coach Buer came in and he's from day one, he was like, "We're going to change the culture here." It's not about winning and losing necessarily in April or in spring ball or in December when the coaching changes happen. It's about setting that foundation and setting that culture to where now you're winning days and now you're winning practices.
Yep.
So I think that's a huge thing going forward for the Lakers is how do we now attack this new voice into fall camp? And then how do we attack week 1? So making sure that they have a set foundation with that. Important.
And it's easier said than done. Coming off a year like that where you struggle, you go 1-9. It's hard for guys to buy into that kind of stuff. When you talk about stacking days and picking up those small wins, how the hell do you rationalize a small win in spring ball after you went and lost 9 games the last season? That's like the player in me saying, like, how do you get guys to buy into that? And Coach is going to have to do a really good job of that. He has a couple additions in the portal, but some of those guys leaving, I want to talk about Keontae Nixon, first-team All-GLIAC guy who was the most explosive part of their offense, from what I can tell in 2024, watching him in person, 45 catches, over 900 yards, 3 touchdowns. Believe he's still in the portal. Their linebacker, Jalen Olukun, who is now at Western Illinois, has made the jump up to that Division I level. Couple additions, though. They get an all-conference running back from Olivet in the MIAA, the D3 level, in Dontal Wright, who had 900 yards and 8 touchdowns a year ago for the Comets. Is an exciting pickup. And then you get a linebacker from Eastern Illinois in Peyton Orth, which is a neat deal for this Roosevelt squad. They're certainly going to need help on that defensive side of the ball. You talk about that physicality and the style that they really need to start playing with to be competitive inside of the GLIAC. And you take a look at this 2025 schedule for the Lakers. You start things off against Quincy, Southwest Baptist, 2 teams out of the GLVC that are respectable. But certainly, you talk about that locker room, those are 2 games you got to have circled in that we can go out there and absolutely go win these 2 games, and everyone in America is trying to tell themselves they can start 2-0. This Roosevelt team has a reason to think so, right? You're not playing Grand Valley and Ferris back-to-back, Pittsburgh State to start off the season. Those are games they can go and win. They go on the road to a quality GLIAC foe in Week 3 at UW Oshkosh. That opponent and that conference has been the Achilles heel of some struggling GLIAC teams in the last couple of years. And then, of course, you get into the GLIAC slate for the Lakers. So that's kind of the cliff notes on Roosevelt. We'll see how that turns into some success in 2025. And again, what's the definition of success for this Roosevelt team? I think that's what maybe people need to reevaluate. Then to close things off, the Northern Michigan Wildcats to close things out in the GLIAC, the team that finished last year, 0-11, haven't won a game in the last 2 seasons. And for me, it's hard to spin a positive light on this, and I'm never going to come on the show and lie to people. Right now, Northern's trying to figure out their identity offensively. You totally flip your script. You flip the scheme on its head a year ago. You opt for this triple option style of offensive attack. And now you have an interesting and unique situation where you don't exactly have the guys that you've recruited to this scheme. And of course, you can't recruit guys to come in and play right away out of high school in the GLIAC. And you have an existing group of guys that don't exactly fit this play style. So you're stuck offensively in a very weird situation. Not many changes for this Northern Michigan staff. They got a new running backs coach, new wide receivers coaches, the same head coaches and coordinators from the past 2 seasons. And it gets worse, I think, for the Wildcats. You look at the transfer portal, 18 total departures, 6 of them being starters. Basically, the whole wide receiver room decimated for Northern. You have to assume that's accounted for in the fact of the changing of offense, the triple option, the lack of touches. A lot of wide receivers would be out as soon as that announcement came. Now, in the addition side of the transfer portal, this is where Northern has just not really addressed a lot of those needs. You have 2 incoming transfers from what I can tell, again, courtesy of Athlink. Jalen Houston, a guy who I've gotten to know a little bit up here at Northern, a DB from Eastern Kentucky. I'm telling you, he should be a day 1 starter for this Northern Michigan team, an impact guy for this team to anchor that side of the ball. You talk about a dude that simply looks the part. Northern, again, I'll tell you this from being up here, we don't have enough guys that you just walk out and pass the eye test getting off the bus. Jalen Houston is one of those guys. He should be a surefire impact guy for this Northern Michigan team. Now, you talk about the 2025 schedule for the Wildcats. And again, you're not pulling any punches when it comes to the schedule in 2025 for the Cats. You start things off against a really quality NSIC opponent in MSU Moorhead in week 0. Go on to play a Northwood team that we talked about earlier. Their trajectory has been up and up since Coach B came on campus down there in Midland. And then you go on to a Division I opponent in St. Thomas. Of course, right into the GLIAC slate. After that, you draw Davenport twice, which could spell not another great year. But again, can't lose hope if you're a part of this team or you're around this team. All the signs are pointing towards probably not another great year for the Wildcats. A lot can change between now and August, though. Isn't that the beautiful thing?
You know what's interesting is obviously you have a lot of knowledge within that program.
It's crazy.
And there's something that I'm sure that they're telling their guys is nobody believes in us. It's about the guys in this locker room that believe, right?
Yep.
And so
I'm part of the Rat Poison now, officially.
Yeah. So you're going to have to get that buy-in and that belief from within. Obviously, it hasn't been pretty the last couple of seasons, but I'm sure there's guys that are absolutely starving for their first one. And so at the end of the day, that's what you're going to have to rely on is you're going to have to approach it with if we don't kill something, we don't eat, right? And once you do that, once you get that first taste, it's like it will roll. It will roll. It'll keep going.
Yep.
But yeah, absolutely. I think the Northwood game is a huge one. I think Northwood obviously, has gone up a lot since Coach B has gotten there, and the trajectory is so much higher. But the one thing I would say about Northern is I'm very curious. What's the reasoning for the 2 Davenport games?
It's a scheduling deal. It's just a matter of the remote location and trying to find opponents. I think everyone kind of struggles with that, especially in the GLIAC. We talked about it. Only 8-member institutions when it comes to football. You add in the week 0, so now you've got potentially an 11-game slate for all these institutions that now have to go out and schedule 4 out-of-conference games. That's a tough ask for a lot of places. And, for some of those teams downstate closer to the GMAC, to the GLVC, and those kind of foes, that's a little different. I think the geographic location makes it very difficult.
I mean, it's one of those things where I'm sure it just gets tough because you are in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, quite literally. But no, I will say to close it out, I mean, there are guys in this team that absolutely believe. And it's hard to believe because there are also guys in this team, if you've been here for 2, even 3 years, you have not experienced success at the college level. And so without having at least a taste, like you talked about, without having that taste, it is so hard to manifest success in between those white lines against really top caliber competition. There's no error. There's no room for error, no room for growth. You have to go out there and earn it, and you have to almost get lucky in one of these games and get a taste of that success to see what that feels like, to want it that much more. There are guys in this roster. There are a lot of them that are seriously bought into this, and I don't want to make it seem like that is not the case. It's just tough because, as much as that is, you just got to win with dudes. And it's going to be a matter of who got the most dudes on Saturday. That's all it is.
Absolutely. And
Simple game.
Hey, anything can happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the show goes on, so you got to keep going every day.
Yes, it does, brother. That was awesome. I got to imagine that's pretty in-depth. I don't know anyone doing it like us, dude. I appreciate you. That was a lot of fun.
I don't know anyone that was like looking up kids' stats and deep diving like, okay, this kid should be, so
right?
It should be fun. I would love to see, looking back on this, obviously we're not making any predictions or anything like that. We're hoping the best for each and every single player and each and every single university. But it would be interesting to see just like, if we called it, Jalen Houston was going to be his day 1 starter. So.
Absolutely. Sweet, man. No, that closes it out for tonight. And again, the goal is, man, every week, different Division II conference. We'll go in depth, break it down, try and shout out as many teams as possible. We've got a couple months till the season starts. I think we can definitely hit all the top, quote unquote, top conferences. I'm really excited, man.
Absolutely. I believe we can. And I believe we're going to, and it's just a start. So
awesome, brother. I appreciate you. Have a good rest of your night, man.
See ya.
Last segment for tonight's pod is a fun one. We're talking all of the best matchups in D3 football to start the 2025 season. Myself and Jimmy Martin. What's up, fella?
Always a pleasure, Kobe. Always a pleasure.
Dude, I'm excited about this one. We have some really, really good matchups to talk about tonight. And where else to get it started than UW Oshkosh taking on Linfield? Oshkosh 6-4 in 2024. Linfield 10-2 has been a dominant out west force, in D3 football in a landscape where you don't see a lot of top level contenders coming from west of the Mississippi. Linfield has been one of the few. Oshkosh, though, 2-0 all-time versus Linfield. Both of those games going into overtime. That is going to make this one, I think, just sets it up for an even better stage. And you talk about Oshkosh a little bit. I'm going to leave them to you because maybe you're a little bit more familiar with them having played in the GLIAC. I'll talk about Linfield on this side. Losing 2 starters to the portal, the offensive line position and DB, one of them being an all-conference selection. Not necessarily decimated by the portal. I think you'll find that with a lot of these Division III institutions, they're not losing half their roster and turning over that mass amount of numbers on a year-in, year-out basis. They are still having a couple of guys poached from top levels, though. Their top 2 rushers from 2024 graduate and move on. So the offensive backfield for Linfield is going to have a big question mark there, I think, for especially the early part of the season. Quarterback Blake Eaton also done under center for the Wildcats. So like I said, that offensive backfield, big time question mark. They're going to have guys ready to go, though. Definitely trust that. Top 4 receivers all gone from a year ago now. The grad students, some of them in that role. This is a team that has a lot of turnover on the offensive side of the ball. And when you talk about an opening matchup against a team like UW Oshkosh, that's when question marks get exposed. That's when people who don't have a lot of snaps and game experience, that's when they go out there and get exposed. They have to learn very quickly. Now, the guys that they have coming up for Linfield, are they ready to adapt and make those changes on the fly and start to, obviously they've had time to develop that chemistry in the spring, but that's a really tough deal. On the defensive side of the ball, Blake Rybar, that's a tough blow losing him. 3-time All-American linebacker, a 3-time Conference Player of the Year for this Linfield squad is also gone. Had 4 All-American selections a year ago, all of them seniors for Linfield. So, long story short, Linfield has had an incredible track record in the last decade of a very successful program that can go up against the best of the best across the country. This year, it's the passing of the torch to a new era, so to speak. Even under the same coaching tree, a new era of Linfield football. What are they going up against in Oshkosh and the Titans?
So Oshkosh, the Titans are always a gritty ball club. I've learned my lesson picking against them on the show a handful of times. They had a really good run game with Justice Lovelace leading the way. Over 700 yards on the ground last year, 8 touchdowns. Can also make plays out of the backfield, catching the football as well. Very shifty, and we call it a breakout year, but I think he's already broken out. Like, everyone in WIAC knows who this kid is.
Absolutely.
Returning 2 of 3 all-region players as well. Kyle Dietzen, absolute stud, leading the WIAC in tackles with 98. And punter Walleye Ratliff. What a football name that is.
Hell yeah.
Reminiscent of Whitefish Willie, the punter from Northern Michigan. Shout out to Whitefish Willie. But losing touchdowns tough. Staying on the staff, though, as a coach, so that's pretty exciting.
That is a neat deal.
Having an alumni stick around. Shout out to Trey, he's a good dude. But no, this would be a really, really good ball game. I'm really looking forward to this one for sure.
100%, man. And Trey, a guy we had on the podcast a while back, really sweet to see that he is getting an opportunity to stay with that UW Oshkosh squad and coach under Coach Jennings down there, which is a neat deal. But let's move forward. 2 more teams, a little bit more of an Eastern flair, Jimmy, in this matchup. Grove City going up to Cortland and taking on the Red Dragons up in Cortland, New York. This one, Cortland, of course, a team that is very closely removed from a national championship. 11-1 just a year ago, taking on Grove City, who has really emerged as the face of the PAC in recent years, especially with the departure of Carnegie Mellon. The Pack has become the Wolverines to lose. Grove City has become a program brick by brick. You see it on the helmets. They have the brick by brick stripe, and we've had the pleasure of talking with a couple of their players and members of their coaching staff. A great feel-good story, Grove City. Both of these teams now, I think, a great way to summarize this, former feel-good stories. Both of these teams, not necessarily coming out of nowhere. I think that would be disrespectful, but Grove City, a very great feel-good story of building from nothing and having a history and a bad history of losing and coming into prominence as a D3 football program. Cortland making the Cinderella run and winning the national championship, taking down the Titan that was North Central and what is North Central. There are 2 former feel-good stories in this one, Jimmy, but I think it's disrespectful to call them that anymore. Cortland, the obvious big piece, losing former head coach Kurt Fitzpatrick, to D1 Colgate. Their new head signal caller at the helm, Tom Blumenauer. He also has new coordinators on both sides of the ball heading into 2025, so a lot of maybe unknown there for the Red Dragons, learning a new scheme on all those phases. This is a totally new team than what we saw in that national championship just a few years ago. And the biggest question there is, talking about that squad, how the hell do you replace Zach Boyes? And the question, it kind of answers itself. You don't, right? And we've kind of had this conversation before when Zach Boyes lost his two best pass catchers in J.J. Lapp and, those kind of guys out on the outside. We thought there's no way they can go and do this again the following year. They did. They made another run. And now, though, you lose Boyes under center. There's no non-senior quarterback from 2024 that has seen game action. So this is going to be one where that position is going to be very fresh for Cortland, right? And that's a very interesting piece coming into this. Their running back, Ethan Gallows, going into his junior season, he'll have to be the bell cow for this offense. That's a role that he has to take on. It'll be interesting to see how they supplement the offensive skill positions with, of course, the recruiting class, the portal, and so be it. But talk to me about the Wolverines, man.
So what stands out to me at the Wolverines, I'm sure everyone that watches Division III football knows this, is that they have a brick wall of a defense, giving up 11 points a game last year, bringing back two of their 5 all-region players in Ben Bladel and Bowden Davidson. Bladel was a consensus All-American, just guys every stat in the book. 34 career sacks and 59 tackles for loss. Also 12 forced fumbles, also number 1 in program history. Look for them to continue to be a brick wall on defense. Maybe they'll give up 10 points a game this year. Who knows?
Yeah. It'd be unreal, dude.
Yeah, I mean, well, why not? I mean, they've shown time and time again they can be a prominent force on defense. I mean, they're going to have a solid offensive scoring scheme as well. I mean, they're going to put points on the board, but this team is known for their defense, certainly.
That they are, and what they've made some noise in and some waves in this transfer portal cycle is at the quarterback position, right? This is a team that has seemingly signed 3 quarterbacks in the transfer portal, a D3, D1, and NAI product, so expect there to be a ton of competition heading into fall camp. That spot going to be up for grabs, I imagine, and of course getting some reps in spring ball helps to sort out that process early on. This team could look a lot different in the fall, and so whoever shows up in those couple of weeks leading up to a matchup like this will earn that top spot heading into this game. But we'll move forward. Let's talk a little bit more GLIAC, talking about this UW lacrosse team taking on Carnegie Mellon. And this is one that's really exciting for me. 2 teams that I don't believe have squared off a ton in their history. They finished 8-4 last year. The Eagles from lacrosse, ranked number 18 in Division III, reached the second round of the playoffs. Jimmy, what else do you need to know about this lacrosse team heading into 2025?
So speaking of new coordinators, as you said previously, Tarek Yagi, the former UW Stout offensive coordinator, returns to his alumni, the Wisconsin Lacrosse Eagles. Very excited for him, taking over a very high-powered offensive by Kyle Haas. They're going to have a great offensive season. Averaging 32 points a game last year, ranking 4th in the WIAC. I'm sure Yagi plans to change that. Their offensive production was solid. I mean, they scored 59 points in their first-round playoff game last year. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely don't have a shortage of offense, but I think what I like about lacrosse is they're really well balanced last year. They established the run game. They can throw the ball. Like, they have a pretty good backfield. Look for them to continue that as well. They did give up 20 points a game last year, but the WIAC is like the Wild West of Division III football. It's just 45 to 38, like scores like that all across the board. Giving up 374 yards a game. Not fantastic on the defensive end, but they did hold St. John's to 24 in that playoff game last year, and St. John's is a heck of a ball club, as we know.
That they are. And then you talk on the flip side of this matchup, the Tartans from Carnegie Mellon coming off of a trip overseas and playing overseas, which we got to talk with Coach Larson about, which is a really neat deal. A strong defensive identity for the Tartans, and that's what's carried this program. PAC champions in the 2021 and 22 seasons. Now, though, that team kind of playing second fiddle, in the PAC. They're actually making the move over to the Centennial Conference this fall. Will be their first year and first full season in the new conference. And now, this is that's kind of makes this a unique clash in 2025, right? These teams don't have a history of playing each other, and that's what makes a matchup like this very exciting. You talk about that defense for Carnegie Mellon. The efficiency rating of this defense, 107, best among the PAC teams based on the opponent's passing efficiency and some other statistics. What you need to know is that defensive side of the ball is what's going to be carrying them throughout the early part of this season, especially. Limited opponents to under 60% on completions and only 10 passing touchdowns across 12 games in 2024, Jimmy. A stat. Yes, you do it again. There it is. Yeah, I had to flip the camera.
Oh.
That's a ridiculous one, right? That's less than one per game for you mathematicians out there. And the offensive side of the ball certainly has its perks as well. The Tartans typically leaned on the ball control, the more disciplined, well-refined type of offense, trying to keep that time of possession battle in their favor. Playoff era tendencies, that kind of suggests fewer explosive plays, but a strong third down execution, low turnover rates, a lot of things that, you're going to lean on this defense. If you're this Tartan squad, you're going to lean on this defense to get you through some of those tough times, and then eventually that offense got to get kicking, right? You got to win games with this offense, and so this is hopefully the start of what becomes a reoccurring matchup with these two squads. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah,
be a good deal,
certainly.
man. But we'll keep moving forward now over to another big-time matchup out east. This time, though, Johns Hopkins making the trip to Ithaca, New York, Jimmy. This is a really fun one. This is a newly created matchup, not necessarily the first, but it's only the third meeting of these two teams, the Blue Jays winning both in 2023 and 24. So prior to just a couple years ago, these teams had never faced off, which is a really neat deal. Johns Hopkins, what can you tell me about this Blue Jay squad heading into 2025?
So they can win a lot of different ways. 2023, they're just outscoring every opponent. But last fall, was their defense giving up only 13.6 points a game. Only combined one reported transfer throughout this portal that we could find. Losing their running back and quarterback pair should be shouldered much of the workload on the ground in 2024. Schroeder back in the backfield to be the main feature back. The QB room for Johns Hopkins could be an interesting one, graduating 2 seniors. However, they do bring back 2 All-American defensive backs in Carson Bordeaux and Michael Nwosu as anchors of the respective sides of the ball.
Definitely a big time. We actually had Carson on the show way back when, and now that I think about it, it might have even been 2 years ago that we had Carson on the show. But that's a guy we might have to follow up with again this fall in much more of a leadership role for this Johns Hopkins defense. Taking a look at the other side of the field with Ithaca, 3 of 4 losses last year for Ithaca came to top 25 opponents. And for a lot of people, that might be satisfactory. For Ithaca, for Coach Torper up there, who I happen to know very well, that's not acceptable for this level of squad. And I think what's really interesting about this, too, Ithaca has been a team that's been in the mix for a very long time. I'm not going to sit here and act like this is a very recent coming of some success for this squad. But when your rival in Cortland goes and elevates and wins a national championship and is at the top of their respective conference, from a standpoint of one of the best rivalries in college football, that's going to make you want it that much more. It's going to make you better. And I think that's a very neat dynamic with D3. You see it at every level, but at D3 especially, is that Ithaca now has to step it up. They have to raise their bar to match Cortland. And if you are going to win one game all year, it's going to be the Cortica Jug game for this Ithaca squad. They're not worried about that just yet. They got Johns Hopkins, a really quality opponent coming into town, but they bring back multiple QBs under center who have seen some meaningful snaps. They bring in also a transfer from Monmouth, a D1, along with 2 top receiving threats, all of which are only going to be juniors this fall. So a pretty young core, relatively speaking, for this Ithaca group that has a couple years ahead of them. They did graduate senior safety Jake Connolly. He was the co-defensive player of the year in the conference, an All-American selection for this Ithaca team. And then some staff turnover, new coaches at running back, linebackers, wide receivers. One of them was actually a decorated wide receiver alum, and another was an NFL draftee. So really neat that you bring back some alum ties and then, of course, some professional football playing experience. But the big-time coordinators, head coaching positions are all back for this Ithaca team heading into 2025. Now, Jimmy, what are we going to do with this next one, my friend?
I'll take River. I'll talk about the Riverhawks here for you. But River Falls has won all 3 chess matches. Against the Alma Scots. River had a 27-7 lead at half last year, but did not stop Alma from fighting back to make it a 41-35 ball game in the end in favor of the Birds, sadly. But River Falls had quite a season last year, 7-3 overall, 5-0 at home, but they did lose Blaha last season. He's coming back this year. I think that's going to be a huge, huge difference to their game offensively. I think they're going to have a great year this year, a lot better than last year. 444 yards per game on offense, the best scoring defense in the WIAC last year, but they gave up 39 points a game.
Yep.
So that's, like I said, the Wild West of the Division III. Oh, there you go, Kobe. Yep. Go Scots,
This is
baby.
a house
Yes, sir.
divided over here, Jim. A house divided. I don't know if we call this the facility tour D1R Bowl. We need to have some kind of title. Damn it, we might just need to be on site for this one. Knowing both of these staffs and what goes into these teams, that might be one of the first game day destinations this fall, this River Falls and Alma matchup.
Only if I can wear the Alma helmet the entire time. That's the only rule. I'll wear a kilt. I'll wear a kilt for that one. I tell you what, I got Alma all day in that one. Give me Alma. Give me him. Give me Alma. Give me Alma.
Coach Couch is going to love that. This helmet from the Scots. Check out the little insignia there. Repping the Falcons tonight, coming off that awesome facility tour down at River Falls. This one is a really exciting one. And to talk about this Alma team a little bit, this is a team, the MIAA was their conference. I think Albion used to be the team to beat in that conference. They kind of passed a torch off to this Alma squad. They go make a hell of a playoff run. They upset Mount Union. They do all of these things that Alma had never really done before. Then last year, they kind of took a step back. They lose the MIAA for the first time in a couple of years to a really talented Hope team that is making a resurgence inside of that conference. Can Alma come out in 2025 and restake their claim on top of the conference? I think so. I absolutely think so. I'm ready to run through a wall for Coach Couch and company down there.
I just got to hear some bagpipes. That's all I need. That shit's looking to be so fired up, man. Oh, my God.
Doing the kilt walk on campus
I love
down
the
there.
bagpipes, dude. Give me all the bagpipes. Give me all the
Second to none.
bagpipes.
And there are some very, you know what, I say all this, we had a great time at River Falls. There's great history and tradition at that program as well. This is going to be an incredible matchup. Alma closed the season in 2024 at 8-2, and they bring back our guy, Carter St. John, the senior at quarterback, the man who has done it all for this Scots attack with his legs and through the air. That's the most pivotal piece of this program right now. He's back for the Scots, and he is going to be a big-time playmaker. Odin Safardine, the linebacker, the fifth-year senior All-American, 114 tackles last season for Odin on the defensive side of the ball. So respectively, guys on each side of the ball that are going to be big-time playmakers for this Alma team. This is going to be, I think, a fireworks game, man. This is going to be, you talk about the quarterbacks on either side, the offenses. This is going to be a game that has fireworks written all over it, and I'm sweating too much to stay in this helmet, Jimmy, but I am so pumped. If you can't tell, for this matchup, this is going to be a really exciting one. Down in River Falls, Alma has to go on the road into what you know will be a hostile environment and get the job done here, dude.
St. John's going for 5 against the Cobra Kai defense. He's going to just air it out all over him. I cannot wait. That Cobra Kai defense doesn't stand a chance.
Wow.
Yep.
Coach Wiss. Hey, that's his words. Statement. Coach Wiss, his words.
Bold statement being made. I played for Stout, Coach. I just give me the Scots all day. Give me the Scots.
Moving forward, another WIAC squad. Let's talk UW Platteville taking on Aurora. Platteville 4-2 all time in this matchup. It dates back to 1940. Jimmy, tell me about the history of this one.
So this is a wild stat for you. So out of these 6 matchups, 4 of them ended in the losing team being shut out. A lot of these matchups, 1940, 1948, 1949, 1950, 1951, 1952. Platteville leading the series all time at 4-2, but as you can see, this is a pretty historic game. I mean, they haven't played since 1952, but they have tons and tons of history, these two programs, but not very recently, that is. Platteville coming in here, bringing back almost their entire front 7 on defense, and they also bring back Garrett Stair and Tyler Bacon, both all WIAC players. The Pioneers won the WIAC on our home turf last year, so that one still stings a little bit for a Blue Devil like me. But Platteville's a heck of a program, and they've been good for a really long time, and I expect them to be really good again this year.
100%, man. You flip the script a little bit and talk about this Aurora team, one that has had so much success, Jimmy, in their respective conference. And you look at this graphic that I'm pulling up here, this is kind of what tells the story. 2024, the NACC champions, that's 6 in a row for the Spartans over at Aurora. That is ridiculous. A feat that is accomplished by very little college football teams. They have come out of this conference, I mean, you can see it the last 6 years, and have had some playoff success, need to, I'm sure in their minds, get over the hump and make an even deeper run into the playoffs. But again, you talk about this matchup in the fall. They bring back their fair share of some guys that are going to make a difference. Quarterback Tyler Aikens, the Offensive Player of the Year. Matt Kickle, offensive lineman, both first-team all-conference selections a year ago. And then you look at the offense. 464 yards per game to just 235 on defense. That's a disparity that has led them to those conference championships. And I see your note there that it might be time for Aurora to make the move.
Hey, Aurora's really, really good, and Don Beebe's a hell of a coach. I think there's no reason why they shouldn't be playing North Central every single year. Wheaton every single year. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they can compete with those teams, and I think if they want to make that jump and be really good in the playoffs, they got to have tougher competition in the regular season. That's just my opinion. They can do whatever they want.
They can that they can, but that is a neat one that, again, ties in a little bit of that history, which is a really neat deal, and it makes that matchup a bit unique. But to keep things moving, let's close things out here. Wheaton at Mount Union down in Alliance, Ohio. Mount 1-0 in the postseason against the Thunder. They've not met, Jimmy, in the regular season. And tell me a little bit about this matchup heading into this one.
So, obviously, Wheaton entering this game is a very, very strong Division III program, the Isthmus Bowl champions last season, but they will face the epitome of a dynasty in Mount Union, coming off a national championship loss last year, definitely stinging a little bit. This one is a big tone setter. Mount Union looks to extend the dominance, but Wheaton aims to gain big-time national respect. Not that they don't already, but it would just be extremely elevated. And obviously, you talk about the playoff implications of this one, too. Even though it's a regular season game and it's week one, like, this could be huge for Wheaton's strength of schedule, strength of record. You know, that plays into it a little bit, you know, and that's to be huge for their morale for the entire season. They can come in and knock off Mount Union. Are you kidding me? You kidding me, Kobe?
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, I'm thinking like the Hanson ratings. I'm thinking about like spreads for this game. I mean, I don't think this will be more than like a 12 or 12.5-point spread. Like, Wheaton's pretty damn good. And even though Mountain Union's solid, Wheaton's very good in their own right.
And a 12-point spread for a lot of teams might be seen as a slight, but when you're playing the Purple Raiders, it's anything but.
Exactly. And like I said, the Hanson ratings will decide that. But my prediction is 12.5 right now.
Okay. Fair enough, dude. Yeah, and this is a Mount Union defense that generated 52 sacks just a year ago, and this is a team that has capitalized every point along the way on their opponent's weaknesses and their mistakes. And you kind of mentioned it here in the notes. You talk about them going up early on Stout in the Isthmus Bowl and the turnovers generated that made that game a close one. That's going to be the kind of the strong point for Wheaton to make sure they retain the ball in this matchup.
Yeah, no, certainly. I remember firsthand, you know, I had a front row seat to the Isthmus Bowl. We were down 28-0, and our defense just continued to put pressure on them, get stops on third down, get sacks, fumble recoveries, things of that nature. And we battled all the way back to only lose by like 3 points. I think it was 35-32. Came right down to the wire, actually. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Wheaton can handle the momentum changes. I think that was one of their downsides last year, being that, you know, there were just some situations that they put themselves into that they did not have to by self-inflicted wounds. So look for them to improve on that end.
Sudden changes, brother. Look for Mount Union, Giovanni Kennedy on that offensive front, first-team All-American offensive lineman to anchor the front there for the Purple Raiders as they try and go get another ring because they were just that close a year ago. But, Jimmy, that's all we've got, brother. I really appreciate it. That got me really excited for the slate of Division III to open up the season, man. And we'll kind of go through and maybe do some more breakdowns of some of these top teams, some of the conferences, and some other deals moving forward, man. But thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Hey, go Scots, baby.
Yo, this guy. See you, dude.